Welcome you all for the SWAM course Animal Waste Management. Module name Handling and Hazard associated with Animal Waste under the week 2 lecture number 2. The title of today's discussion is Carcass Disposal Methods. Myself Dr. Anuradha Kumari, Assistant Professor in the Department of Livestock Production Management, Faculty of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Institute of Agriculture Sciences, Banaras Hindu University. Today's lecture under the following subheadings. What is the need for sanitary disposal of the animal carcasses? Preparation of the animal carcasses for sanitary disposals. Different methods used for the disposal of carcasses, their comparative study, and what are the different novel methods used for the animal carcasses. And finally, disinfection of the premises after the disposal of animal carcasses. In India, we have a largest livestock population and large bovine population. This population died because of subnatural causes, maybe because of diseases, or may a large number of livestock carcasses develop because of disaster, as in the case of flood. In the absence of any organized and scientific method of carcass disposal of dead animal, it has become a major environmental issue. In generally, when hide is removed for leather production, the remaining carcass is left as such in open spaces that attract so much flies and vulture and dog. Open dumping of animal carcasses also attract many birds which can cause air accidents. According to one estimate, on an average, 30% of cattle and 20% of buffalo carcass and around 50% of the sheep and goat carcasses are not flayed. This results into economic loss of about 9 million of bovine and 9 million of ovine caprine skin. After the flaying of animal carcasses can be converted into valuable animal byproduct. These byproducts have a very good demand as an important feed ingredient in livestock and pet food industry. The economic utilization of dead animal is also important to prevent the spread of disease. It also reduces the feeding ground for the vulture and save the aircraft from the bird accidents. Disposing of animal carcasses is the social and legal obligation too. The veterinarian who were working in the area of environment hygiene, it is of their prime responsibilities. Different methods used for the carcass disposal depend upon the size and the amount of carcass need to be disposed. Local regulation and available resources with us. Before we select any method of carcass disposal, it requires certain preparation. First, we need to cover the animal carcasses just to prevent the transmission of disease by the fly and insect. For that, covering of cloth or application of insect repellent like the kerosene can be used. Simultaneously, covering of all animal orifices with a cotton plugged dipped into the disinfectant solution like carbolic acid and formalin can be used. After the removal of animal skin with a sharp knife is done, except in the case when the animal is died off because of highly contagious infectious disease like anthrax. The person involved in handling and disposal of animal carcasses should use personal protective like boots, gloves, goggles, and face mask to prevent the transmission of disease to them. It is required to bring the animal carcass up to the disposal site. For that, we should use closed covered vehicle. None of the case animal carcass should be dragged up to the site of carcass disposal. The selection of disposal site should be done away from the public water supply, away from animal and human habitation. As far as possible, fencing of disposal site should be done. With different method of carcass disposal are divided into traditional method and the new technology. Traditional method like burning and burial can be used, but in the developing country, economic ways of carcass disposal also we have. The different methods of carcass disposals are cremation, burial, flame gun, incineration, rendering, composting, and fermentation. Now we will discuss all these methods one by one. First, most common method of carcass disposal is cremation. For cremation of the large animal carcass, a space of 1.7 to 2.5 meters square is required. For the small animal carcasses, an area of 1.25 meters square is sufficient. We have two methods of cremation. The choice is depend upon the number of animals need to be cremated. Routinely, cremation is used for disposal of 1 and 2 animals. In case of emergency, large number of animal carcasses can be handled with this method of carcass disposal. As we have discussed, we have two methods of cremation. One is the cross trench or pit method, and the second is the surface burning. In the cross trench pit method, we uses two trenches right angle to each other. The dug soil is heaped at the four corner as so created. After that, wood, coal, straw or any other burning material is developed into a pyre over the heap of the soil. The carcass soaked in kerosene or paraffin is placed over the pyre and then finally burned. Next method of cremation is the surface burning. This method is used when we need to handle the large number of animal carcasses. Again, in this method, we have to dig a trench of size approx 90 cm or length can be varies depending upon the number of carcasses need to be handled. During this surface burning, animal carcasses are in such a way that head of one carcass is lying next to the hind quarter of other, or in between the carcasses of large animal. Small carcasses can be used as a filler. Finally, carcasses is covered with the kerosene and paraffin, and wood and straw is used for the burning. Next, traditional and oldest method of carcass disposal is the burial method of carcass disposal. Either the landfill or burial method is not a good alternative for disposal of highly rich organic animal carcasses. Along with that, burial method required land and labor. During the selection of site for the burial method, care should be given to avoid the contamination of groundwater. Burial is not possible in area where the groundwater level is too much high. The burial should not be less than 6 feet in the case of the small animal or 8 feet in the case of large animal. Normally 1 to 2 feet area is of the burial site is covered with the leftover feed and dug where the animal is died off. Guideline issued by the government for the selection of burial site. Burial site should be located away from the public water supply. A common guideline is to maintain a minimum distance of 50 meters away from all such type of sources. Area required for burial of the animal carcasses is 1.25 to 2 meters square, and for small carcasses like sheep and goat, it is 0.8 meters square. Carcasses should be buried to a minimum depth of 1.5 to 2 meters, as you can see in the given said diagram, just to prevent the exposure of the animal carcasses to the surface and prevent the scavenging by the animal. Simultaneously, it should be kept in the mind that the bottom of the burial site at least 2 meters away from the normal groundwater supply. In some cases, planning of the burial pit is required in area where soil is not well drained and to prevent the leaching. After putting the carcass into the pit, it is covered with the soil and a layer of lime. Normally, lime is added to enhance the decomposition process to control the error. But due care should be taken not apply the lime directly on the animal carcasses because it develops the wet condition and that slow down the decomposition process. Application of lime also prevent the scavenging by the carnivorous animal and bringing of animal carcasses to the surface. In continuation with the burial, other method is the landfill. Carcasses can be disposed by the landfill method. Carcasses for the landfill, carcasses are placed in a designed landfill area, often along with the other waste material. Then, what is the key difference between the landfill and the burial method of carcass disposal? Landfill is a typically large designated area, while burial can be conducted on site or in a small designated location. In case of landfill, along with animal carcasses, other waste material can be disposed of, while in case of burial method of carcass disposal is mainly for the carcass. Now coming to the next method of carcass disposal, the incineration method. Incineration method is a nothing the thermal destruction of the animal carcasses at very high temperature. For the said purpose, different type of fuel like the diesel, natural gases and electricity can be used. By the use of incineration method, carcass is converted into ash. So it is a very much biosecure method. This method effective in destroying the all type pathogen because of very high temperature. It can be used for the both a small and large kind of animal carcasses. We have a two type of technology that can be used for incineration method. First one is the fixed whole carcass incineration method, used in a stabilized facility in which whole carcass or a part of carcass can be completely burned and reduced to the ash. In this method, normally natural gas is used as a source of fuel. Next technology is the mobile air curtain whole carcass incineration. This is a mobile system which can be taken on the site. In this method, whole carcass is burned and reduced to ash by using wood as a fuel. Because it can be used on the site, there is no requirement for transportation of the animal and material. As incineration reduces the carcass and to ash, so by incineration method the volume of carcass is reduced and it is easy to handle. However, during the burning process in incineration, many air pollutants are released like the particulate matter and the many toxic compounds that depend upon the efficiency of the incinerator and temperature achieved during incineration process. Simultaneously, incineration process required a lot of energy. Now coming to the next method of carcass disposal is flame gun. In this method, carcasses is kept on the surface of earth and burned with the help of flame gun within a few hours. It is considered a safe and economic method of carcass disposal. However, the current practices are carcass disposal is slightly different, and the main objective of current practices is to produce the quality hide and skin. These current practices are also mandatory under the Prevention and Control of Infectious and Contagious Diseases under the Animal Act 2009. Simultaneously, the current practices provide the opportunity for employment generation to the poorest of poor people engaged in the carcass collection disposal process. These current practices involve the integrated utilization of all the tissue of fallen animal and finally converted into different animal byproduct that have a utilization in different area. For the said purposes, different type of machinery and equipment are required. In continuation with the modern technology, most important is the rendering. Rendering is actually a method of recovery of fat from the animal carcasses. In the rendering process, large type of boiler is used for cooking the animal carcasses under the different combination of temperature, time and pressure. The end product of rendering is the technical fat that is known, that is tallow, that is fat recovered from the sheep and the cattle, and lard, fat recovered from the pig. During the rendering process, two valuable byproducts, that is meat meal and bone meal, also produced. Meat meal can be used as a good source of protein and vitamin, and bone meal can be used as a good source of phosphorus and the calcium that can be used as a component of animal feed and pet food. Basically, there are two methods of rendering. One is a wet rendering, other is a dry rendering. As the name indicated, in the wet rendering, animal carcasses come in direct contact with the steam. The quality of fat obtained in the wet rendering is better. For the wet rendering, vertical shape of boiler are used. In the dry rendering process, horizontal type of boiler are used. In this method of rendering, animal carcasses does not come in direct contact of steam. Steam is circulated in the outer jacket. Recovery of byproduct is better in the case of dry rendering method. Dry rendering method, all the rendering method inactivates the most of biological contaminants and transfer the carcass into useful animal byproduct as we have discussed tallow, lard, bone and meat meal. However, rendering emits unpleasant odors and it is also required so much infrastructure facilities. Now coming to the next method and the most that can be alternatively used with the traditional method of carcass disposal is the composting. Composting is the less expensive, self-sufficient and biosecure method of carcass disposal. Composting is a natural biological process that converts organic animal carcasses in under aerobic condition into useful byproduct. During the process of composting, all the pathogen except the endospores of bacteria and prions are destroyed. Area required for the composting for the cattle is 70 meter square, for the pig and sheep is 3.5 meter square. During the composting process, we are used a different layer of animal carcass and co-composted material. Why this co-composted material like straw, wood shaving and different types of leaf are used? This co-composting material provide the source of the carbon that is used by the microorganism for their multiplication. Simultaneously, this co-composting material absorb the water leaked during the decomposition process. It also helps to control the odor and provide the porous condition to the compost, which help into the easy movement of oxygen for composting and the release of the gases produced during the composting process. These co-compost actually act as insulate and help to maintain the core temperature of during the composting process. For the composting of large carcasses, it can be broken down into the small component. For birds and small carcasses are used as a filler in between the carcasses of large animals. Now coming to the next method of carcass disposal is the fermentation. Bacteria action is carried out by the lactobacillus species and this process is completed within the 48 hours. During this process, ruminant content and blood can be fermented in a 6-week period. For the offals and scraps are inside efficiently with the help of 3% formic acid. The byproduct produced as a result of fermentation process can be used as a component of animal feed. What are the general practices that should be followed to prevent the public health hazard related with carcass disposal? First is the adherence to the regulation. Every state, nation and local have their certain guidelines for carcass disposal. We should follow them strictly. Proper training of the personnel that are involved in the handling and disposal of animal carcass should be done. We should have a emergency planning when suddenly it is required to handle the large number of animal carcasses as in the case of the disease outbreak or in the case of natural disaster. Along with that, education of the community and the public about the different method of the carcass disposal and what are their associated risks should be communicated. Following the safe disposal of animal carcasses, thorough cleaning of the animal building and equipment and after that followed by disinfection is most important one. This cleaning and disinfection is done to decrease the pathogenic leaf and just to break the disease cycle. Disinfection should not be used on the animal directly. We have different category of animal disinfectant used for the said purpose that may be bactericidal, varicidal, fungicidal, sporicidal. It is better to use a combination of them. For a routine cleaning purpose, chemical agent like trisodium phosphate, a sodium carbonate dissolved in hot water which will facilitate easy cleaning can be used. After the cleaning, we should remove all the traces of cleaning agent by rinsing it with water, then only apply the different disinfectant. Most commonly used surface disinfectant are sodium calcium hypochlorite, iodine, phenol, quaternary ammonium compound. For making the concrete surface disinfectant, we can do the whitewashing. For the closed animal shed, a combination of formalin and formaldehyde in the ratio of 2:1 can be used. When these two chemicals are used in the shed ratio, the gas is produced that go to each and every part of the building and help in the disinfection of the building. Infected premises can be disinfected by spraying of 2% solution of sodium hypochlorite or 4% formalin. So, we can conclude our today lecture that the carcass disposal is a crucial aspect of animal management system and to maintain the environment hygiene. Carcass should be utilized by adopting re-entering process or incineration, and priority should be given to the carcass utilization plant because they handle the animal carcass in a scientific manner and convert them into valuable byproduct. Disposal of carcass through deep burial method may be adopted when rendering incineration facility is not developed. It is the duty of the concerned authority to ensure that the necessary infrastructure required for the utilization and disposal of animal carcasses should be developed in the area of their jurisdiction. Most suitable method for a particular situation will depend upon factors such as the number and the size of animal carcass need to be disposed, available facility, environmental regulation, and the economic consideration of that method too. Thank you.